Chodesh Tov, a guten Chodesh. So, we're now up to the 7th day of Chanuka, a time of great rejoicing. So, I want to go a bit more deeply to understand the difference of opinion with regard to kindling the lights according to the second reason given in the Gemara. Beit Shammai say we start with one light and then we add another one each night. This is the most beautiful way of fulfilling the mitzvah. Beit Shammai say we start with 8 lights and go down to correspond to the following. Beit Hillel, as we find in so many of the statements, their attitude is completely positive in all things. They say, Malin Bakodesh Ve'en Moridin, in all holy matters, you have to keep on going upwards. Holiness, in other words, means constant growth. And since the kindling of the light of the menorah, which commemorates the transformation of spiritual darkness to spiritual light, of the Chashmonaim, the Hasmoneans, we're able to overcome the darkness of the persecutions, physical and religious, of the Jewish people. And in Chanuka we celebrate the victory to reach holiness. Not the concept of purifying the temple, and the Kohanim are the ones who have to really keep the temple service. That means they represent the group that it has greatest responsibility to transform the people of Israel to kingdom of priests and the holy nation. So we have to go upwards. And why does he say Ve'en Moridin? And you shouldn't go down. Obviously you have to go up, then it means you can't go down. You shouldn't go down. But what they want to teach us is not only is it important to keep growing, but also you shouldn't stand still. But the human being in some parts of the Tanakh is compared to a person in constant movement. If you keep still, it goes down. So therefore you have to keep on working. Hillel says in the Ethics of the Fathers, a person who does not grow, you shouldn't think that he's all right. No. Asaf, he deteriorates, he stagnates, and he goes down. So you can't keep still, you've got to keep on going up. But don't jump up, go up step by step. Because if you jump up, you're likely to fall. So that's that we can understand here, follows his whole approach. And Shammai, as we already explained in previous Shura, and follows the Midas Hadin, he says that in order to become saintly and pure and holy, you've got to remove evil. As it says in Tehillim, keep away from evil, and then you can do good. So Mirava Seitov. And therefore, first we celebrate the fact that the evil, the corruption of the way in which the Hellenists, non-Jewish and Jewish, corrupted the higher values of the Jewish people, we celebrate the fact that this went down just like the bullocks brought by the nations of the world on their behalf in the temple in Sukkot's time. They go from 13 down to 7. So therefore the power, the impure power of the nations we hope, decreases. As it decreased in the time of the Hasmoneans, their power over the Jewish people became weakened. Now, there are some who say, after all, Korei Achak, that applies to Sukkot. Not that. Why do you use such an example? Or we've explained it to some extent. But some say, in fact he mentions in one of the books of the Maccabees, that since they hadn't celebrated Sukkot, so therefore when they came to the temple and they purified it, they thought, let's go and do part of our Sukkot service. As far as I recollect, one of the books of the Maccabees, it says they took the 4 species and they went round the altar like one had to do it on Sukkot time. So that's part of the connection. And some say, why do we keep 8 days? In fact, the Tzimach David, who is a Torah historian who lived around 300 years ago, he says, the question to everybody else, why do you keep 8 days? So he says, because it's like Sukkot. Because they missed Sukkot, and therefore they thought, let's go and make the festival now a bit like Sukkot. And Sukkot, together with Shmini Atzeret, is 8 days. Now, I think there's a certain reflection of this if you will turn to Jerusalem Bible, to page 785. So, if you turn to this chapter 118 of Tehillim, we say the Hallel today. We say in verse 26, blessed he who comes in the name of Hashem. We bless you from the house of Hashem, which was obviously also a declaration when Chashmonaim, the Kohanim, were able to bring about the reconsecration of the temple, which, as we know, is referred to, not only was it a Chanukat menorah, it was all the Chanukat Mizbeach. I mean, that's clear from all the texts. In the Maos Sur also we say, in the first Maos Sur Yeshua see, they say that we thank Hashem that He permitted us to do Chanukat HaMizbeach. It doesn't mention the first verse, which refers to Chanukat, the Chanukat HaMenorah, Chanukat HaMizbeach. And where is this mentioned? It's the next verse. El Hashem Vayoalonu. Hashem, El is the big power of loving kindness, that's Hashem. Vayoalonu, He brings us light. Which light is that? That's the light of the menorah. And when was that reconsecrated? On Chanukah. There's Isru Chag Bavotim Ad Kanot HaMizbeach. Go and, you know what Isru Chag, means?
It's like the day after the holidays, like
yes, after all the 3 regalim, it's called Isru Chag. But the idea is it's the conclusion of the festival. So as far as Sukkot, if we consider the 8th day to be Shmini Atzeret, it's to some extent also Isru Chag for sure, for Sukkot. The 7 days of Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret. They're also interrelated, because the sages say, we know that on Shmini Atzeret, the Regel B'fnei Atzmo, to some extent is independent. To another extent, it is really a concluding Atzeret, concluding festival for all the 3 regalim, but above all also for Sukkot. But it's Isru Chag Bavotim. He says you should go and conclude the festival with avotim, which are thick branches. Mention the Chumash. Enough 8 avot are what we call today the Hadassim. It's one of the Avaminim. So, Isru Chag Bavotim, we know that they surrounded the altar, they went around like we do today, especially at Sukkot Hoshana Rabbah, you go around with the four species. Ravotim ad kanot hamizbech, to the corners of the altar. So you can say, here there's a reference how after the Chanukat HaMenorah, which was 7 days, they added another day. The 8th day is to some extent the Isru Chag of the 7 days of the miracle. And what did they do? They went and said, let's go and make this a Sukkot celebration. As it said, in fact, one of the Maccabeans, they went and took. So therefore, Sukkot is also connected closely with the Parei HaChag. So Beit Shammai preserved its tradition. But we go start, therefore we've got to be a bit like Sukkot. On Sukkot we find that the bullocks, they went down from 13 bullocks the first day, 7th day 7, so it goes down each day, number. So similarly, the lights of Chanuka also, they go down each day because of what the simple explanation is, because what the Gemara says, that the 70 bullocks brought all together during Sukkot correspond, and they were even representing the 70 nations. Now, I think the deepest interpretation of this is given by Rav Hirsch. There should be here, you should find here, it's worthwhile reading it, because I would say many things, he is almost a unique, high level and deep level interpretation in certain subjects, especially the subject of the sacrifices. His commentary on the sacrifices in Vayikra, and now also the festival sacrifices, which we have in Parshas Pinchas. So we have I would say probably the most comprehensive, deep interpretation. To some extent, you find similar concepts in the writings of the Maharal, the hint at the Zohar, and especially there's a very brilliant work on all the reasons of the mitzvah, including the korbanot, given by the Ramah. Do any of you know who is the Ramah? Moshe Israel is?
He was a rabbi in the 16th century, no?
Yes, and what is his most famous work?
He commented on the Shulchan Aruch.
That's right. Shulchan Aruch is the laid table of halakha, how we should behave. It hardly enters into any of the sources, and also it hardly mentions any reasons, but it just gives the decision of the Beis Yosef, which he in turn based upon the previous codifications of the Rif and the Rambam and the Rosh and other Rishonim. And that's why we call the Beit Yosef is the final, so some is a consensus of opinion following the majority view, which divides between Rishonim and Achronim. That's the Shulchan Aruch, which they become the code for the Jewish people in practice. But there were special minhagim that had developed from the Bali, Rashi and the Bali Tosfot, which are to some extent minimized and were not known so well to the Beit Yosef. Knew many of them, but still customs had developed, and therefore the Ramah produced a sefer called the Mapa. What's a Mapa?
Map.
Tablecloth. Tablecloth. What does this tablecloth go on?
The Shulchan Aruch.
The lay table. Shulchan was the lay table.
Yeah.
To really use the table for Ashkenazim, you've got to put a tablecloth on. That's the Ramah. But the Ramah, he wrote other works, very important works, and he wrote one on the reasons of the mitzvah, which is very extensive. It's called Torah Ta'olah. also, I think Rav Hirsch used that as well. So I'd like you all to turn now to the Jerusalem Bible. Let's turn to Pashat Pinchos. You know, today we also read Pashat Pinchos contains the daily offering, the Shabbos offering, and the festival offerings, which today we read the Rosh Chodesh, also the Rosh Chodesh offering. So, if you look, I gave you the page in the Jerusalem Bible, Pashat Pinchos.
193, not 19.
You have it? It's
193?
no,
192. 192.
you go and look at. We'll start on page 198. So, this is chapter 29 of Bamidbar, and there it says, on the 15th day of the 7th month, you shall have a holy gathering, you should do no menechat avodah server work, you keep a feast to Hashem 7 days. You should offer a burnt offering, a sacrifice made by fire, 13 young bullocks, 2 rams, and 14 lambs of the first year, which have to be without blemish. And the meal offering shall be a flour mingled with oil, 3 tenth measures to every bullock, of 13 bullocks, 2 tenth measures to each ram of the 2 rams, and a 10th measure each lamb. So therefore, we have the bullocks of the first day, 13. And we have every day, turns out, there are 2 lambs brought. No, so 2 rams brought, Elim are rams, and there are 14 lambs brought. Elim, Kevasim, and Parim. So were brought every day of Sukkot to the 7th day, and that remained the same number of 2 rams and 14 lambs the whole week. But the bullocks changed. First day 13, second day 12, and so on, until the 7th day, they only brought 7 bullocks. So, we all know that what's the concept of a korban? What's korban mean?
Offering. Burnt offering.
What's the
Burnt
root of
close. Karol.
What's the root?
To get close.
Close to who?
To get close to God.
Through the offering, you come close to God. So the concept is, how does the offering bring close to God?
We're killing our animal instinct.
Yes, because we do share animal instinct, and they exist inside ourselves. And Hashem wants the Jewish people to offer their physical instincts to Hashem. He really wants it in life. Perhaps we could say the significance of the offerings we find in the Arcade of Yitzchak. And those, Hashem says Yitzchak, founding father of the Jewish people have to be willing to dedicate their lives to Hashem. To do that, you've got to be able to control the animal inside yourself. And that's why instead of giving him up, Hashem did not want, really, Yitzchak to lose his life. He wanted him to use his life, but use it for producing life and not producing death. So, unfortunately, that was the task of Yitzchak. Ishmael, he had a very strong urge of death inside himself instead of life. But he originally used the concept of death to kill his enemies. He wanted even to kill Yitzchak, according to some Midrashim. Just like Esau wanted to afterwards. That's why Esau joined. And today we see this Pere Adam, this wildness. It means he allowed the wild animal instincts to transform his life, to influence his spiritual self. To the extent that today they even make the ambition, even of the youngsters, is to kill themselves, not they kill others. So this is the exact opposite of Akedas Yitzchak. Because we have to dedicate our lives to Hashem. But Hashem has given us the temple service, when we're on this sufficiently high stage, to go and learn how to subject our animal instincts to Hashem. I think it's very courageous of Rav Hirsch in his time, when in his writings, also in the talks he gave, the shiurim he gave, he tried to explain to enlightened Europeans, so-called, and most of the intelligent Jews were very strongly influenced by Western civilization and their concepts. And many said, sacrificial worship is barbaric. And we've got to keep away from such things. And unfortunately, in that same place, in Germany, this concept of never showing anything cruel to animals. So what did they do? They became like the lowest animals to develop cruelty against human beings. In fact, there's a very interesting Baal Teshuvah, who was the great psychiatrist and psychologist, he was professor, psychologist at Sorbonne University, Henri Baruch. He gives a talk on Hebraic civilization and the science of man. They analyzes psychologically how there can be such a transformation. But Hirsch in his time, one of the great achievements is to go and explain in a deep fashion the details of the Kavanot, Vayikra. So he says like this, just to understand it better. It's worthwhile. This is there had been a recent excellent new translation of his of the works of his. So it says like this, explain it. Like this. We find, he says, what's the concept of these 13 bullocks on the first day. So he says on the first day there were 2 rams. The ram is the leader of the flock amongst the sheep, called Ayil. And Ayil means those who have leadership roles. And the Keves is a reference to the lambs, the Kavushim. Kavushim really means they are pressed down, because lambs are very submissive. It's a Keves, it's a lamb. So he says, the truth is, he analyzes the 70 bullocks in the following way. He says there are 2 groups of 7 bullocks and 6 bullocks. Because on the festival of Sukkot, Israel approaches God with a double offering of an olah, a scent offering, an offering that brings you to a higher level. Because the parim were offered as olah. Olah means an offering that goes up. So one group is 7 bullocks, 1 ayil, and 7 kvasim. There's a second group of 6 parim, 1 ayil and 7 kvasim. Why did you divide like this? Because 7, as we've already learned, brought the exposition of the Maharal. 6 represents, what 6 represent?
Material of man.
The material world. Sheshet Yamin, the 6th state, at the beginning of creation, is the material world, the 3-dimensional world, 6-directional world, the world of space and time. And what's the 7 represent?
Laws of nature.
The nature, what we called by the philosophy immanence. And what does 8 represent?
Above nature.
Above nature, transcendental. So therefore he says, the concept brought here, because the power means productivity, creativity and activity. Why? Because the ox, the bull, is very strong. Not only it gives strong meat, and the para gives milk, but it's very creative. You could use it for work. So he said that the historical, the 2 communities that are similar in the roles of Keves and Ayil, because that goes all the way through, but dissimilar in the role of Pa. It may even be that the Pa afterwards went into many other languages, meaning power. The historical cause of both communities relates to the one shepherd of man, it's the Ayil, and then man is Keves, but the shepherd is the Ayil, and both are blessed with immense power and strength. They stride at the head of the flock, which is Ayil. Ayil also comes from the root which that means to have power, but they differ in their creativity and activity, which is power. The members of the first group have entered into a covenant with Hashem, which means 7, not only in the historical course as being the flock of Hashem, the Kvasim, but also in their creativity and activity to be given power. Not only does their history reveal the one God who guides the events of the times, but also their creativity and activity make up a revelation of God, for they subordinate their deeds to God's laws, and all that they do attest to His will. In other words, we're the flock of Hashem, Tzon Kodoshim, and Hashem is the one who leads us. And that's the task of one group, which is a group of Am Yisrael. But by contrast, the second group are close to God in their faith alone. The history, the wheel of world, is a revelation of God. But their deeds do not attest to God. Passively, they belong to God. But actively, there are 7 kvasim, passive, the kevis is passive, but parim, which is the power, there are only 6. Why? In their life are subservient only to themselves as creatures of creation. They're controlled by their desires. They follow their urges and inclinations, their opinions and whims. Or simply said, they do what comes naturally. And naturally it goes under the heading of 6. They don't shape their actions according to dictates of the will of their Creator and Master. Their life of action doesn't bear the signature of 7. Their history is divine, but their deeds are not divine. They are 7 lambs, but only 6 parim. That means you see Hashem's guidance, says the heart of kings are in the hands of Hashem. Hashem's providence is over all mankind. But Memshaltecha v'chodor ador. The Memshalah of Hashem is constant, but the Malchut is not as yet recognized by the nation, by all the other nations. They don't all say we have to subject ourselves to the will of God. So therefore, clearly, what is the difference in Israel and the nations? It's not rooted in belief or denial of God as a director of man's fate. Rather, it's rooted in belief and denial of God as a director of man's actions. So the Parim Shiva, the Ha'elichat Shiva Kvasim, represents Israel, the group that includes 6 Parim, 1 Ayil and 7 lambs, that's the rest of mankind. So he says, on the festival of Sukkot, Israel builds its sukkah under the protection and blessing of Hashem. A building, the ultimate goal of the entire historical process of the nations of the world. So we approach, the people of Israel approach with 13 parim, 2 elim, and 40 kvasim. It doesn't draw near to God just in its own name. It gives expression to all nations of the world, as Israel the nations approaches in the name of all mankind. But we mark the contrast. There's a section that serves God, there's another section that does not serve Him. And that's what divides mankind into 2 camps. But this goes down, it diminishes, and the influence of Israel's mission and the example that Israel has to set amongst the nations. The sages say, why did Hashem disperse Jews in every corner of the world? In order that the teachings of the Torah, of Am Yisrael, their example, should spread to mankind, to all parts. So, we say therefore, Israel, all mankind will be united in the acknowledgement of God and the life service of deeds. They will stand before God as, in the end, the nations of the world will join with the people of Israel to have 7 parim, elim shanaim, and still have 2 rams, and to have 14 lambs. About 2 groups, however, they all join together under that stamp of recognizing and serving Hashem, which is the 7th, right? The 7th Shabbat. So, the historical guidance, special understanding of Israel, won't disappear, because there will be a difference. Israel and the nation of Israel will continue to be separate and distinct, even though they will be equal in their value. Both will close to Hashem in the direction of the history, and both will lead the world for the achievement of mankind's purposes. There will continue to be 7 and another 7. They will be the same in rendering homage to God by fulfilling the commandments given to each. The teaching of Sinai, with all the mitzvot given to Israel, and the general teaching given to mankind. The active life of all people, the stamp of faithfulness to moral duty. As it says at the end of Zechariah, that the nations will come to celebrate Sukkot, Yerushalayim, and on that day, Hashem will king over the whole earth. His name will be one. So when the sages say these 70 bullocks correspond to the 70 nations, this is the offering, a plea for the atonement of all mankind. In the course of time, you said the contrary of Israel, the nation is disappearing. Mankind is destined to return to God in its active life. And because of this, Hashem preserves the nations. Then he says, the prophets describe the nation's whole development. We'll have to continue Okay, I'm going to continue at 12 o'clock because I've gone over time.